Hey, what's up everybody? Danny Lightning back again with another CSR2 video. Alright, so today this is my guide for your Elite License and your Tempest races. We're going to focus on the Elite License on this video. When you get an Elite License, you got to make sure you're not using your fastest cars, and we're going to explain this in a minute. So in an earlier video, we went over the boss races. So once you beat all of the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4, and Tier 5 bosses, a new set of boss races opens up, called the Tempest races. So the first thing you have to do is you have to get an Elite License. And there's one race with a Tier 1 car, one race with a Tier 2 car, one race with a Tier 3, one race with a Tier 4, and one race with a Tier 5 car. And once you beat each one of those races, the car you use becomes elite. And then you're never able to use that car again for any of the Tempest races or the next elite license. Now you can still use this car in normal races, but it's locked into an elite thing. You cannot use an elite car to get elite 2. So for example, I use this Toyota 86 to do my elite 1 license. When I had to do my Elite 2 license, I had to use a different Tier 1 car. To do my Elite 3 license, I had to use a different Tier 1 car. So that's 3 cars from each tier you need just to make Elite. And you want to make sure you're using your slowest cars to do this, because you want to use your fastest cars to race the bosses. Don't make a really fast car Elite, because you will not be able to use it again when you get into the boss races. So that would be a big mistake to make a really fast car elite. So use your slowest cars. I cannot emphasize that enough. Now all these are just a single race that's basically a time trial. Now I'm going to show you the times for these, alright? So the first time trial, you have to run a 13.5 with a tier 1 car in the quarter mile. You've got to run a 12.1 with a tier 2 car in the quarter mile. You've got to run a 12.8 with a tier 3 car in the fourth quarter mile. You got to run a 14.7 with a tier 4 car in the half mile. And you got to run a 12.5 or faster with a tier 5 car in a half mile. Now, tier 1, 2, and 3 are always going to be a quarter mile. Tier 4 and 5 are always going to be a half mile. So that's something you probably want to remember. Alright, so that's after I beat all 5 of these races, now I can run the first set of Tempest races. The next video, I got the times for that right here, but the next video is going to be about the Tempest races themselves. We're focusing on just getting your elite license right now. Alright, so the second set of elite license, you have to run a 13.1 with a tier 1 car, an 11.450 with a tier 2 car, a 10.310 with a tier 3 car, a 14.350 with a tier 4 car, and 11.9000 with a tier 5 car. And then when it comes to the third set of elite license, you have to run a 12.3 with a tier 1 car, a 10.2 with a tier 2 car, a 9.5 with a tier 3 car, a 12.910 with a tier 4 car, and a 9.160 with a tier 5 car. So those are the times for the 3 different elite licenses. Alright, so after you get your first elite license and you beat the Tempest 1 races, then Tempest 2 opens up. That's when you do your Elite 2 license, and then you can race the second set of Tempest races. And then after you beat that, Tier 3 opens up. Tempest 3 opens up. And I'm still waiting on one last Stage 6 part for my Ferrari F12. I have to run a 9.1 something, and I'm only running like a 9.4. And this gets very hard to get your Elite 3 license because the times are so fast, especially on tier 5. I pretty much have to have that Ferrari F12 maxed out in order to beat this time. So as soon as I get a stage 6, I think, transmission for that car, I'm going to be able to beat this race pretty easily. All right, let's actually go out and do that race. And I'm going to lose, but you can see what it's like. So here's the last Elite time trial I need to do. Change car. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pick my F12. Now I could actually beat this with the Hurricane, but the Hurricane is a better choice for Tempest 3, Tier 5. So I want to make sure I save this car to do the Tempest 3 races. So I'm going to pick the F12. This is the one I'm trying to make elite because it's not as good. It's harder to beat the very last Tempest boss with this car. That's why I say you want to make sure you're not using your fastest cars. All right. Now the problem with the Tempest races are you have 0 to 100 races where it might say, hey, you have to go 0 to 100 in 1.2 seconds. And that's why it gets hard. Or it might say you have to reach a top speed of like 250 miles per hour by the time you uh, reach the finish line to beat the specific race. I'll go over that more when I actually get to it, but the 0 to 100 races and the top speed races make Tempest 2 and Tempest 3 pretty hard to beat. But like I said, we'll go over that in the next race. Now, I don't know if this thing's going to load in here or what it's doing, but I'll tell you, this game sure can get slow sometimes. Hopefully this game didn't just freeze up, and I kind of think it did. I might actually have to close this and come back and show you what I wanted to show you. So if this doesn't load in just a second here. Alright, I'm just going to close the game. And it seems to be froze up. Knox has stopped. Okay. So this whole thing just needs to be shut down. Okay, so back to the Elite time trials. Alright, this is all you have to do. Hopefully it doesn't freeze up again. Alright, so go race. It tells you right there. If you click on it, you'll see I need to beat a 9.160 with a tier 5 car. So this is the very last race I need to beat before I get my Elite 3 license. And you can run this over and over and over. So if you happen to race this and you lose, no big deal. It's only the very last race where you race the boss and win his car. That's the only time it matters if you lose. So let's go ahead and race this just so you can see what happens. Alright, now you're going to see a blue line on the track. I'm kind of glad I didn't beat this yet just so I can do this race and show you. You're going to see a blue line on the track. And that blue line is going to move. So if you go in front of that blue line, you're winning. Now if the blue line shoots off and you're behind it, that means you're losing. And you're going to see the blue line's going to take off and I'm going to lose. And there's a little bar. I'm going to move my camera. There's even going to be a little bar that goes on the top that shows how far close you are to the finish line. And you can see the blue line on that too. And you're going to notice it's in front of my car, which means I'm losing. Alright? So watch the blue line. 3, 2, 1. So you can see that blue line took off. Alright? It's beating me. I run like a 9.4 and I need to beat a 9.1 something. 9.486 and I need to beat a 9.160. Alright? Now I do have one car that's capable of beating this, but alright, on the Tempest 3 races, you got to do a race that has 0 to 100 times. And the Lamborghini Hurricane has a much faster 0 to 100 time than this Ferrari. This Ferrari has a lot more top speed, but the 0 to 100 times are not as good. So my understanding is the Lamborghini Hurricane is a much better choice. Now I actually used this car to beat Tempest 1 and Tempest 2, but for Tempest 3 I guess the Hurricane's better, so I'm going to go ahead and make this one elite and then use the Hurricane to beat the last Tempest boss. If I can finally get the one stage 6 part I'm missing, I can beat this race here. Alright, I kind of think that explains the elite licenses. Like I said, I can't stress enough, do not use your fastest cars to get the elite license. Now I'll just go ahead and show you which cars I used to get the elite license. Let's go back into here. Alright, so I go to my profile, I click here where it says elite license, and that pulls them up. Alright, so I use my Toyota 86 for tier 1. That's a pretty slow car, alright? Don't use your Volkswagen GTI. Like if you happen to win a Volkswagen GTI with 1 star, don't use it. Just buy some sort of car from the dealership with 0 stars to use for this elite license. All right, you only have to run a 13.1. Pretty much any car you buy and get some fusion parts in is going to run a 13.1 or faster. It's actually not even 13.1, it's a 13.3. And I was able to run a 13.1, okay? For tier 2, I used this Audi TT-RS. Alright, it's a 0 star car. For tier 3, I used the Audi RS5 Coupe with 2 stars. That's not a great car, alright? It's not a bad car, but it's not a really, really good car. So, nothing wrong with using that car. Or if you have the store-bought one with 0 stars, that's probably even better. For tier 4, I used this Jaguar F-Type because at the time that was the only tier 4 car I had that was fast enough to beat this license. That's not really the greatest car either. That's one I won and got a bunch of parts for. For tier 5, I did not have a tier 5 car that was fast enough to get this elite license except for the Shax car. And I don't regret using the Shax car here because I could care less about that car. I don't really like it. It's not a bad car, but it's not a good car either. It's just kind of okay. Now for tier 2, I used the 1 star Abreth 500, which is cool. It's a nice little car. It's not great, it's not amazing. Alright, so that was a pretty decent choice. For tier 2, I used the Subaru WRX STI. I actually don't like this car at all, so that was a good choice to make elite. Alright, now for tier elite 2, I used my Mustang GT Premium. Now, I will say, I used the Mustang GT Premium to beat the first Tempest boss, and then I got a better car. So I would not use this to get your elite license 1, maybe your elite license 2, but you're probably going to need this car or the BMW M4 to beat your first set of tier 3 Tempest bosses. But that's the one I used here. And then I used this BMW ACS8. I can't stand this car, but it was fast enough to make elite, so I used it. This is actually a pretty terrible car for tier 4. Then for tier 5, I had a store-bought Hurricane Coupe. That was an okay choice, alright? That's all I had at the time that was fast enough, so that's what I used, and it worked out just fine, okay? Now for the tier 3 elite license, I used a store-bought Volkswagen GTI, and I actually have a 1 star by this time I got a 1 star version of this GTI, which is even better. But I used this store-bought GTI here to beat the Tempest 1 and Tempest 2 bosses in tier 1. Alright? So that's the car, but for Tempest 3, I got a better GTI with 1 star, which runs about a tenth of a second faster in the quarter mile. So I went ahead and made this one elite, and I'm going to use the other GTI. For Tier 2, I used Finn's Exige 360 Cup. That's the only Tier 2 car I had that was actually fast enough to beat the Elite 3 license. For Tier 3, I used this SRT Hellcat. It's a decent car, don't love it, don't hate it, but whatever, I used it to make Elite. I don't need this to race any bosses, so that was a good choice, I think. For Tier 4, I used my Ferrari F40, which is one of the cars I live race with all the time. I forgot to mention, once you make a car elite, it gets a 10% respect point bonus, so it'll earn 10% more respect points. I live race with this one a lot, and it's not one of the better cars to use for the Tempest 3 bosses. So I went ahead and made this elite so I could get the RP bonus on this car since I do a lot of live racing with it. And for Tier 5, as soon as I get that last Stage 6 part, I'm going to use that Ferrari F12. And then I'm done with all the Elite license, and then I move on to the last set of Tempest bosses. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers everything you need to know about the Elite license. I'll say it once more. Use your slower, crappier cars to get your Elite license because you're going to need your faster cars to race the bosses. Once you lock in a car in here, you cannot use it for the next set of Elite licenses, or you cannot race any of the Tempest bosses with it because they're now Elite, and Elite cars are not allowed in the Tempest race series. Alright, so I think that pretty much covers this, so alright, see you later. If you like my videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel.